Students might enter your classroom thinking that what good writing looks like is sitting in the library or in their room, silently typing away productively in isolation. You form your thesis statement, you do some research, which hopefully just confirms what you were already thinking about and ignore the stuff that doesn't, and turn the sucker in by deadline. For better or worse, sometimes writing feels that isolating, and that's not necessarily a problem. You've probably gotten some really good essays from students working in this sort of way. But what that vision of writing misses is the reality that most of us encounter in pretty much all real world communication situations. Most of us don't have the privilege of strapping ourselves into an isolation chamber and disconnecting from the rest of the world while we work on our writing project. Instead, in reality, while we write, the world outside is still spinning. Other acts of communication about our topic are multiplying. You make some progress, and then someone comes in and changes your project's timeline, or new information comes in that you haven't accounted for, or you're about to hit send on your brilliant response in a super important email thread, and someone else responds first and changes the conversation entirely. In a certain sense, each of these interruptions are problems, roadblocks that frustrate your writing process. They're like unwelcome detours that slow you down. But to experienced professionals, while we still pull out our hair at these moments, we also know that this is, in fact, what it means to write in most real world contexts. To see things this way, those other interruptions don't need to be lamented as detours that prevent us from easily reaching our goal, but instead as normal, if not entirely predictable, parts of the journey, like the bumps and drops on a mountain biking trail. Your end goal is to get to the finish line, but riding over that landscape is part of the process. Those jumps might even help you launch yourself ahead if you manage them better than someone else. That real world messiness of the communication process is what Paula Rosinski and Tim Peoples talk about as the interactionist model of writing. They say, through engagements, students learn that writing is messy, open ended, indeterminate, and iterative. They learn how to write within such context, and they learn to value the process of working through and with this messiness. If managing the indeterminacies of the writing process is what it means to be a writer, then students need to practice negotiating these complexities as part of their educations. More conventional notions of writing instruction, ones that proceed from teaching structured concepts or approaches and then asking students to practice them from the comfort of their own dorm rooms, have a hard time mimicking that messiness. But using project based learning in the writing classroom can do this. So, what is project based learning? Well, it's a method of teaching that puts students in situations where they encounter multifaceted or ill defined problems. They're given time to immerse themselves in the issues, and the learning happens through the experience as they tackle the problem with the help of faculty, advisors, and probably teammates, applying what they know and discovering what they still don't know. Here's an example from my own business writing and communication class of what it might look like to incorporate project based learning in the writing classroom. This assignment, in which student teams created infographics for on campus partners, had a lot of the same elements that any assignment would have. There were lead up drafts that student teams had to complete, and there were reflections that they had to do afterward. Pretty standard stuff as far as writing assignments are concerned. But the best part was that student teams were working with real campus partners to accomplish tasks that those offices had put on the back burner for a long time. And that meant that instead of sitting in front of their computer and typing all day long until they turn into a shell of their former selves, they could be out in the world, seeing people, talking, interacting, investigating. One team worked with our Center for Wellbeing on campus to produce an infographic meant to advertise the office's services to students, because the office hadn't been around for that long. After initial meetings, talking to the director of the Center for Wellbeing and finding out the scope and purpose of the infographic, students had to do research. They met with each other to talk about other documents that the Center for Wellbeing had produced and to learn about the office's services. They practiced communicating through email. They had follow up meetings to see if they were on track. They showed drafts of their work to their sponsor and get immediate and relevant feedback, like how they found out that this draft, which was looking pretty good by this point, wasn't using the approved color palette for the Center for Wellbeing. Whoops. But again, this is real world writing. Those frustrations, those mishaps, those miscommunications are all opportunities for students to grow as writers. And they're all opportunities that would not have happened if students were sitting in isolation, working on their essay, silently at home. If this sounds good to you, if you want to get students out of the cobwebs and out into the real world experiencing these kinds of communication opportunities, you can look at the description section of this video. You'll find links to templates of the assignment that I've mentioned here, along with others. You'll find wraparound assignments that I use to scaffold this work with students, as well as resources, the readings and videos that I had them watch. I've even included email templates of messages that I sent to campus partners, because it's probably pretty daunting to think about how to write to them and find them. Feel free to adapt them however they help you. No need to write me to ask for permission or to cite me. Just have fun with it. And for those of you that want a deeper dive into the research that suggests that this kind of project-based writing could be beneficial for students' learning, I've provided the citations and links to the articles that I've mentioned here. Before I sign off, I have a lot of people to thank for supporting me in making this video. Thanks to the Center for Project-Based Learning here at WPI, and thanks more than anything to my students who allowed me to experiment with them on these projects, and to all the great sponsors on WPI's campus, the offices, administrators, faculty who helped sponsor these projects and make them come to life for my students. Thanks to all of you. This is Ryan Madan at WPI signing off. See you later.